Over half of our board and staff have experienced homelessness or housing crisis or discrimination, and 70% of our board and staff are people from diverse communities. Our number one priority is to make sure that the voice and the power of people that have experienced homelessness or a housing crisis are at every decision-making table in the design, implementation, and evaluation of homeless programs and housing. And then one of our major issues that we've been working on for the past few years is around lead-safe homes. 1 out of every 3 homes in Minnesota has lead paint in it, according to the Minnesota Department of Health. And we have at least 700 children each year that are poisoned by lead. Now we have also lead pipes that has water in them, and we have other ways that people can get lead poisoning. But the major reason that our children are poisoned, according to the Minnesota Department of Health, is because of lead paint. So we've been working on a bill to really begin to address how do we start testing the homes across Minnesota, both apartments and single family homes and other homes that were built before 1979, and then to encapsulate the paint, which would cost about $2,500 per unit. And by encapsulating it, it makes the unit or the housing opportunity safe for at least 5 years. And the reason this is so important is that no level of lead is okay in our bodies, and that it causes brain damage when it happens to our little children. And for each child that becomes poisoned by lead and becomes disabled, it dramatically impacts their lives. And they have many developmental issues as well as different types of brain development issues. And for folks that become disabled because of the lead paint, it disrupts their life, their family's life, and really limits their ability to be all that God has created them to be. In addition to that, as taxpayers, it is very costly for us to allow any of our children to become lead poisoned. For each child that becomes disabled by lead, it will cost us $100,000 per year for the rest of their life per child in tax resources to keep them stably housed and the resources that they need. And certainly we can invest those dollars to make our housing safe. In addition to that, MICAH helped in starting the Homes for All Coalition back in 2012. And we are excited to have 270 organizations that are actively involved with that. Linda, who's on today, is one of our new co-chairs, and we're very happy to have her also on the MICAH board. And with our 2022 legislative agenda, we recognize that over 500,000 households are paying more than 30% of their income for housing, which means that they are at risk of experiencing homelessness. So we're working on equitable access and fair treatment, making sure that if you have a rent subsidy, whether it's housing choice voucher or other type of resource, is that a landlord cannot refuse you for having those dollars, as well as making sure that we're creating opportunities for people that have had poor criminal records or credit histories or tenancy records to be able to get into housing. And then we want to make sure that we have stable housing and that people are not being displaced. And so making sure that we have the rental assistance available for folks. So Bring It Home Minnesota campaign that Beacon has started. That's a part of our agenda for Homes for All. Would put $1 billion a year into rental assistance to help our families be able to afford housing and to make sure that we are continuing to address many of the tenancy issues that really oftentimes put people into an eviction status and they don't even know about it, in ways that we can expunge that. We have a number of older units of housing that we called naturally occurring affordable housing, called NOAA units. Many of them are up for sale. These are folks that have owned properties for 30 years that now want to retire. But we have a lot of folks from other countries and from the East and West Coast and investors that are coming in and buying up that property. Linda can talk to you about how that happens. And they put a little bit of renovation into the building and they kick everybody out. And then we have a lot of folks that don't have places, and we have housing that costs a lot more money. We also want to make sure that we are really beginning to address more in a more robust way the disparity that we have in home ownership. We were the worst in the nation in regards to disparity in home ownership between Caucasian and people of color, especially our African-American Black Minnesotans. And we are working to increase the opportunities for folks to get into home ownership, and as well as working with the manufactured home parks so that folks that are owning their own manufactured home can actually buy the land that's underneath them, and they can have cooperative home ownership. And we also want to make sure that we are addressing the immediate needs of folks and expanding emergency shelter and having additional dollars for capital improvements, as well as making sure that we're preventing people from becoming homeless. COVID-19 has had a major impact on people being able to stay stable in housing because of the loss of jobs or needing to stay home with kids because kids were doing remote learning. And so a couple of weeks ago, the Rent Help Minnesota, which has been with federal funds to basically prevent people from becoming homeless, closed to new applications. And that's because we ran out of federal dollars. And so what we have going forward in legislation this week is an additional $300 million out of hopefully the American Rescue Plan dollars that we have at the state level to provide additional emergency rental assistance to help those additional families that are at risk of being evicted. We are working very hard to make sure that people are not going to be evicted and that they'll have the protections until June. That's not in place yet. We encourage people to be actively involved in calling your state senator and representative, as well as the governor's office, to ask for that $300 million for emergency rental assistance to be in place right away. So we are very excited about the work that we're doing. We think it's very important that people that have experienced homelessness and the housing crisis are at every decision-making table, but also that they're involved in the actual running of programs, in the implementation and the creation. And then as we are doing new building and doing build out of our infrastructure, we want to make sure that we're creating livable income jobs for folks and getting people into paid training programs so that as we are building that infrastructure is that we are really creating opportunities for people to move out of poverty and into the middle class. So MICAH is very excited to be here today and encourage all the folks from Women Press and folks that are listening in to get actively involved in the work to make sure that everyone, without exception, has a safe, decent, accessible home that's affordable for them. Thank you.